everybody. Welcome to the Watch Pals. My name is Chris, and this week we're going to be talking about the movie Father's Day. But first, I want to introduce the panel of pals. First on the list, we have Jeff. Jeff, thank you for being here. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me.
And next, we have Brian. Brian, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, everybody. Think about kissing your father on the forehead.
And finally, we have Jordan. Jordan, thank you for being here and giving your dad a kiss on his forehead for being here today.
Mm-hmm.
Good old Jimmy.
And before we get started, I want to ask you guys a question. Now, I know Jeff is here this week to drive the ship of Father's Day because it was his choice this week. But before we get started with that, I want to ask a question because I was thinking about this recently about a movie you used to watch. You know, maybe you got it for Christmas, you got it for a birthday when you were younger, because back in the day and when we were growing up, you used to get a VHS tape and that was the tape you were going to watch basically over and over and over again because we didn't have streaming services and stuff. So for me, it was like I got one movie and it was like the movie I watched for like weeks and weeks and weeks. And that movie in particular, and I'll give you guys I'm going to go first here, so I'll give you a second to think about this, but I had the movie American Tail with the little Fievel mouse.
Five.
I mean, that was a movie I watched. My aunt got it for me for Christmas one year when I was a couple years old. I can't remember exactly what age I was, but that was an awesome movie that I watched so much. Very sad, though, because of the subject matter, looking back on it. But that was one of those movies that I watched over and over and over again because there was literally nothing else on most of the time when you were a kid. How about you, Jeff? You want to go first with this? Can you think of a movie you used to watch over and over and over again?
Sure. I was really quick. Was Fievel Don Bluth? I think it was.
Yeah, it was his studio.
Yeah, Don Bluth rules. So for me, I have two that come to mind. One is The Lion King. For whatever reason, I watched it a million times. I actually remember being like sick as a kid, and I was just being in my room for like a week, basically, with like some horrible sickness. And all I did was watch The Lion King the whole time. And I don't know why, but that's like a core memory I have. Still really like The Lion King to this day.
Great
and the
movie.
other one, yeah, great.
The game was
all-time.
tough.
Yeah.
The Genesis game was very tough.
Yes, the game was very tough. And speaking of games, this next one was based off of a game. The other one that I could think of is Fatal Fury, the motion picture, which starring, if you're unfamiliar with Fatal Fury, it's a video game by a company called SNK. It's a fighting game. And I really like fighting games. And growing up, I was like, what? There's a cartoon for this? So I picked it up and I loved the movie, and I watched all the other ones, but the movie was the one I really watched a lot.
That was a good movie as well. That was an anime, right?
It was, yeah.
That was a great
I don't
movie.
know if I saw that one.
What? You didn't see? Yeah, you have. You had to have seen the movie.
I don't know.
Was there something more than a movie?
There's two prior to it, but they're more
They never
based
did like
off
a
of.
live action or anything. I don't think of that one.
No, it would be horrible if they did live action.
Yeah, but they did a few of those that were horrible.
It was Fatal Fury, the motion picture.
Okay.
Fatal Fury, the motion picture was the third and final anime. There were two before that went through the story of the game, but the movie was just, they made it all up. It had nothing to do with any of the games.
So, Brian, how about you? What's a movie you watched?
Sure. Since he picked two, I'll pick two because I couldn't decide. So the first one would be Home Alone on VHS because I won it at a carnival. Actually, I'll take that back. I won the money to purchase it at a carnival, and then I went to Blockbuster Video to buy it when it came out at Christmas on VHS. So I remember that. So we watched a lot of Home Alone.
Gambling at a carnival.
It was a community carnival thing where they had the funnel cake and whatnot. They had the money wheel.
Oh, like
You not played the
Oh.
Yeah. Like they did
Okay.
the spinning wheel and everything. So
still
I won-
illegal
I won-
for you to play it, but go ahead.
Sure. But then my grandmother was there, so it was a carny.
Brian's a carny and he stole it from a patron. of the
Secret
carnival.
carny. The other film, and this is really random, would be Ghost Dad with Bill Cosby because I watched it a lot as a kid. Yeah. I remember watching that film a lot as a kid, and it has one of the best lines, one of the funniest lines I've ever heard. And it's He gets into a cab with an insane cab driver, and he goes, the road. Like the guy's driving crazy, so he's like, the road is that one. He points out the window. The driver says to him, "Eat shit." To which Bill Cosby replies, "Thanks, I'm trying to quit." This is a PG movie, by the way. So,
okay.
Again, it's a horrible movie, but I watched it a ton as a kid.
Brian, a very big fan of Bill Cosby. Okay, early Bill Cosby.
What was it? Early Bill Cosby, Leonard Part 6 or whatever films he did. Yeah.
Jordan, how about you? What's a movie growing up?
It's easy. I got one and one only. The Never-Ending Story.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Classic movie. Especially that theme song, that opening song. Man, oh man, still good. Still a banger.
Still, yep.
My dad likes to tell me, you mentioned my dad earlier, so I'll bring him up.
Yep, kiss him on the forehead.
He kiss him on the forehead. He likes to remind me often how many times we used to watch it as we were kids. That movie. He's like, I don't know how the VHS player didn't break the amount of times you guys watched that movie. So yeah, that movie is great. Still great.
Did you do one of those things where your VCR would rewind like super fast, and then it would you're like, that has to break in there because the way it stopped. Did you ever have a tape that just ripped inside of the machine because it was rewinding so fast? That happened once. It's so infuriating.
I don't think so.
I think my dad did it on purpose because he didn't want to watch that movie anymore. One of those things.
It's like, oh, you broke it, Chris. Sorry.
Yeah. I pissed my parents off with how much I was rewinding it. Like my dad was threatening, stop it, you're gonna break the VCR with how much you're rewinding it. Because I just rewind my favorite parts in movies, so I would constantly.
Did you ever have one of those things that were made specifically to rewind?
I was just gonna say they had the little race cars that were rewinders.
Yep.
They're so stupid.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move into the impressions of this movie, Father's Day. So everybody's seen that but me, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Jordan was really intoxicated, I think, the last time he saw it.
Yeah. I was told I watched it. I don't remember it. But then upon rewatching it this time, there's one thing that I definitely remembered. I was like, oh, that stuck with me. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is that movie. Primarily the very end scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeff, since you're in charge, I'm going to give you my impression of what I thought since I'm the only one who hasn't seen it. And I want you to explain to us why you picked this movie to watch.
Yeah, so real quick, though, Father's Day, we're not talking about the Billy Crystal, Robin Williams 1997 comedy drama.
Runaway hit.
Yeah, we are talking about the 2011 Astron 6 Trauma release that's very much a grindhouse film, Father's Day. So going into this, I had no idea what was going on. I think I've seen Jeff wear you have a Father's Day shirt. I wish I had a Father's Day shirt.
Someone does. Don't they? Someone have one?
No, none of us.
So I'm making things up now. But going into this, I knew the type of movies Brian likes, and I knew you guys talked about this movie before, and I've heard you talk about it, but I've never actually seen it until this week. So going into this, especially after considering the Brian's last choice, the Greasy Strangler, I knew I was in for a fantastic ride, and it did not disappoint. But I will say that I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So expectations were low considering the type of movies Brian picked last time. The type of movie Brian picked. But I was, I will save it for later if it surprised me or not. So, Jeff, do you want to take it over and talk about why you picked this movie specifically?
Yeah, so I picked this one specifically because I wanted to do it before Brian picked it because I feel like he would have also picked it. Two, it's one of my favorite movie of this type, like a grindhouse film. It's probably my favorite grindhouse film. And the funny thing about that is these guys, Astron 6, they would it's just like a small group of friends from Canada. They've done a couple things, but they'll pick a style and they'll make a movie off of it. So one was Grindhouse, one was what's that Italian?
Oh, yeah, the Giallo film. That was
Giallo film, yeah. And then they did a stop motion one. Then they did a later there was
Manborg,
yeah, Manborg, and they did a series
Cool
Divorced
Guys.
Dad. They did Cool the Guys, which is also amazing.
And not to interrupt you, Jeff, but what they did before they started making films was they started making these fake trailers for these feature-length films before they even made Father's Day. So they were just making these like fake trailers for movies before they actually even made a full-length film. So
yeah. Yeah, so I mean those are, and then the third reason is for anyone listening to this podcast, I just want more people to watch it. These guys deserved so much more than they got, and I'm happy they're still kind of making stuff, but you know, I don't think this kind of popped off as much as they were hoping. They did it, I think, on like a $10,000 budget too, which is insane. So yeah.
How would you define, for people that might not know, because I can tell, like if I'm watching a Grindhouse movie, like, oh, this is Grindhouse, but how would you define, what categorizes a Grindhouse movie? Like, I don't understand.
Like, I would say, and I'm just going to throw this in there, Jeff. It's like B movie, like low budget, shocking elements, where they go above and beyond and where a normal movie would. So, I mean, like, just to give you an idea, like the gore, the content, it's usually just over the top.
Okay. Yeah, and I just went ahead and threw that into the Google machine to see what it would spit out, and it's pretty much exactly correct. It says Grindhouse movies are low-budget films that are known for their sensationalist themes, explicit violence, and sex. So they're often shown in rundown theaters called grindhouses during the 70s and 80s. So that's where the name came from.
Yeah, New York, they would show a lot of these in like the rundown part of town.
Even visually, like the way the camera looks. And
yeah.
Like I've noticed in some of these movies, like, I don't know how to describe it.
They have on
like grainy kind of something like that.
It's like a 70s effect almost. They try to get the capture that they used to have. Yeah.
Like a low quality type of film. But I noticed the other thing about it is it seems like these type of movies also have the people that wrote it and like run the company as like the main characters.
Like they're involved. Yeah. I think
like,
probably the most popular one is probably the Tarantino double feature, right? Planet Terror and Death Proof.
Robert Rodriguez,
yeah. So like those are probably like the most widely known ones. But I think like, I don't know, when you think of Grindhouse, what movies do you think of? Like I think of like Hobo with a Shotgun. That's another one.
Yeah, there's 70, like there's movies that some of these movies were based on that they built the ideas on. Like there was a movie called, I said again. There's a movie called Her Name is One Eye, where it was based on Kill Bill, I think with a mix of Lady Snowblood, which is another 70s film, but it was like these revenge movies where these females are, you know, just like beaten and all left for dead, and they come back and just take everybody out, no holds barred.
I was going to say that's actually a great point. I know I already brought up Tarantino, but a lot of his style is very grindhousey, even if the movie itself isn't. But Kill Bill for sure is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of movies that a lot of these modern directors or these groups try to do where they're trying to capture that same essence of the 70s cinema where there is no excuse for what it was. They weren't trying to follow like a certain code of conduct with these films. They were trying to be outside the box, and that was really being like gory or violent or sex or whatever the case was. So
is one of them I Spit on Your Grave?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the more popular ones. Then you get like in the horror films in like the 70s and 80s, but this is more in like the shock value type of thing or like revenge film or something like that.
Jeff, do you want to move into the recap of Father's Day?
Yeah, so we'll start talking about it. I'm just going to go ahead and give you a quick rundown. Father's Day came out in 2011. I believe Troma released it. There was some kind of crappy stuff going on there, though. I think Lloyd Kaufman was like selling bootlegs of it or something.
Yeah,
so
he burned them apparently at some conventions. He like sold copies of it on the
out
side.
of his car, which is crazy.
Yeah. And he's in the movie too. They were like kind of hoping that this would, you know, help them, you know, boost their careers and stuff. But then he did some underhanded stuff. So it is what it is. But it was directed by Adam Brooks, Jeremy Gillespie, Matthew Kennedy, and then there's Conor Sweeney's in it as well. So those are kind of like, I think those are like the guys. Those are that is Astron 6. More recently, some of these guys did The Void, which was a more popular horror film, and then even more recent was Psycho Goreman, which is kind of like making like making light of like the Sentai, Power Rangers, Henshin, like you know,
kaiju
like
big costume fighting kind of
right.
thing.
Yeah, but it's like got a twist for it. So that's the guys who did this. It came out in 2011. So before the movie starts, you're actually greeted with a logo. It says Astron 6 Up Till Dawn, ASTR TV, and it kind of shows you like, hey, it's late night. Father's Day is up next at 1 a.m., followed by Star Raiders, and then at 5 a.m., Sexy Beach. So you're kind of getting like this vibe. It's already hitting you with, it has the trauma intro too, which also gets that kind of feeling across.
Throwback.
Yeah. And it's great that they do this because there is halfway through the film, there's a commercial for Star Raiders. So that's pretty funny too.
Whenever this came up, this like commercial thing, I was like, what the hell? Like I thought I was waiting for this movie, but so it kind of threw me off, but it reminds me so much of like being a kid and like turning on the TV at night, like right before, like, I'm supposed to be sleeping. Bed. Yeah, or like I'm supposed to be sleeping and I turn it on if my parents go to bed and I'm watching some weird movie or like WPN or something. And it was always like after like, I remember after watching ECW, this type of stuff would come on where you have this weird like next movie is this. And it just had this weird kind of feeling to it. Like gave me like this weird chills of like, oh God, like 4th grade, 5th grade all over again.
Yeah, very nostalgic.
Not to jump on it for too long, but yeah, there is something that is not around anymore with public access TV and like cable TV compared to now with streaming and everything, where you don't have these like late night, almost like personal feeling to these channels. Like they still show these like movies sometimes late night on some of these different movie channels, but it doesn't have like this local channel feeling like you're watching local channel 6, right?
Like even local TV has like if you look at it at night, if you even have cable anymore, it's always like the same sitcoms over and over and over again a lot of times.
Right.
Or one of those terrible shows like Jag or something.
Jag. He's not a Jag fan.
No, he's not a Jag fan.
Loves wings, though. Loves wings.
Anti-Jag.
What a jig.
All right, so the movie opens up after this, like, these like fake commercial things to make you think you're watching like something on cable. And you kind of we see like it's really dark. There's some bed movement in a room, kind of insinuating something sexual's happening. And then you kind of cut to some flesh being cut with a bone saw. And then there's also a guy pleasuring himself while dismembering a body.
Really kicks off.
Yeah. So immediately it's like, okay, I can see why. Yeah, I wouldn't blame.
See why Brian likes this.
Yeah.
Yet another movie that he likes with.
So it's a pretty rough start, honestly. This person, we don't know who they are yet. They are also pick up the head that's severed and it's like making it blow him with the dismembered head. So yeah, he's eating intestines. It's like the most graphic start right away.
Which I just want to throw this in there real quick. Having a killer using a head to blow himself is not the only time I've seen this in a horror film. It's also happened in Hot Tension. So just fun fact.
Can't wait for that.
Hot Tension?
High Tension, but in French it's called Hot Tension.
Oh, I've seen that. I don't remember that. I only saw it
in the very
once.
beginning, the killer, you can see the killer is getting a BJ, but then he throws the head out.
Well, fun fact about Brian himself.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
His likes.
There you go.
Interests, everybody.
His interests, yeah.
Put that in his bio. Bill Cosby and sever heads.
Yep. Oh, man.
Sever head mouth gibbers.
So anyway, this guy, he's done doing what he's doing. It's quiet for a minute. And then we have this cool pan from like an exit sign. And you kind of see like this figure walking quietly. It pans up. You see a trench coat, a pretty badass looking gun. I think it's like a 6-shooter. So then we cut to this trench coat figure and this guy busts down the room where we just saw this other guy basically dismembering a body. So he busts in the room with the gun. We see the dismembered body like in the distance, kind of like grossly on the bed. And then you see like a little bit of wind blowing in from the window and like kind of saying, hey, the guy escaped out the window. So the trench coat guy looks out the window. He sees this guy with a limp kind of limping away, which later we find out the killer notoriously has this limp. So he thinks, okay, this is my guy. He chases him down. There's like this cool synth going on. We cut to somebody in a car after this, which ends up being our trench coated vigilante. We see a silhouette of the would-be murderer, but the shot shines just enough light on his face. You kind of see that there's like duct tape on his mouth a little bit. So that's a little odd. Then we get this great scene of the car hitting the shit out of this guy. The killer's down. The car pulls back around, parks in front of him. The trench coat vigilante comes out, who we later find out is our, I guess you would say he's the protagonist, Ahab. He slowly walks over to the downed killer. Camera pans up. He has an eye patch. He looks pretty cool. He's got a shotgun. He cocks it. He points it. And he goes, "Happy Father's Day." And the gun blasts. And then it reveals the Father's Day logo. And we get treated to this really cool, like, it's like almost like a comic book, graphic novel style thing going on with the credits. Yeah. So
the opening credits were really awesome. I love the animation style and everything.
I was going to say, the opening really establishes, too, like a look for the film, too, because like a lot of the colors are like super red and purple and like everything's real grainy. And like we were saying, it has like the film scratch. So you get a kind of feel for the film as soon as it starts.
There's a lot of touches like that in this movie where like the font work or just like a lot of little things that like totally go back to that
throwbacks to those 80s movies. Yeah, 70s and 80s.
So I'm going to stop right here because, that's a pretty intense intro. So like, what were you guys thinking? Maybe, I know some of us had seen this a couple times at this point, but like when you first saw it, what were you thinking at this point?
One of you guys can go first. I'll go last.
Yes, go ahead. Let's have Chris go.
What was I thinking was one, like as I mentioned, another Brian movie with some kind of dong and some guy.
Yes.
But also, I was really at this point. I was like, okay, it's gonna be very violent. That's fine. Bloody. That's fine. But then when the font work comes in and the whole thing, I was also riding that high from the beginning with that intro, the way they did with the TV, the different movies. The timeline.
Right, the listing of the movies.
Yeah. So for me, it was more of like, this is a very promising start. I like the feel of it. They really kind of give you a good feel. There's a lot of stuff going on. And I thought this was like one of those Tarantino things where it like throws it back to like, how did we get to this point? That's what I was thinking right there.
All right, Jordan, what were you thinking the first time you saw this or the first time you remember seeing it?
I hated it. So again, like, that opening thing where they're like, it's like an old time, not old time, I guess it would be old time. Jeez. Oh man.
You're old. We're old.
Like the old cable access thing. I thought was really neat. And knowing Astron 6, just from previously would have been Cool Guys.
Yeah.
They typically, at least with that, they start off kind of like a normal, like, what am I watching kind of thing? Like, campy, but then like it escalates until the very end. You're just like, what did I just watch? But this, like, aside from like that fun little beginning, when it cuts to that scene of what that guy's doing to this body, I was like, oh, we're starting off like we're going big right away. Like, this is nuts. Like, we're
literally going hard.
Yeah,
this movie goes hard
and
fast.
Literally going nuts.
Literally gets hard.
It's like, oh, great, and like Chris said, this is just like another, what was it, Greasy Strangler kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is some really weird stuff. Oh boy. But then with the, what's the main protagonist's name?
I guess you could say Ahab is probably, yeah.
I got some I got some very Max Payne kind of vibes from that.
Okay.
Like those games, especially with like that opening, like intro with like the credits, all that stuff.
Yeah.
That seemed very Max Payne-y to me. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Better than the Max Payne movie.
Oh yes, 100%. Yeah,
I was
100%.
also thinking in my head like, oh, how much man dong am I going to see hanging? How many hangings am I going to see here?
How much dong is going to hang in this film? Is that what you were thinking?
There's a little bit of dong hanging, yeah, amongst other things. Yeah. Brian, do you remember the first time you saw this? Like, what you were thinking after this part?
I think when we were looking into this film, I think we were like looking in like, what's the latest indie stuff coming out? Like, what's interesting? And we came across a screener copy of this or something. We were watching it. I think it was DM and I. It pretty much fulfilled what I was expecting as far as the plot, because I knew going into it I saw the trailer. I knew what the killer was going to do, or what he rapes and murders fathers.
Yeah.
So
You're like, no, Bill Cosby's on it, so I'm not really into this movie.
Wow.
I mean, it's not a Cosby vehicle. What can I say? But no, but I knew kind of going into it what to expect a little bit. But what I didn't know, I actually didn't watch the fake trailers like you guys. So I didn't see Cool Guys. I heard about these things like Fireman, all these different fake trailers. But after seeing it the first time, it definitely like just hits the accelerator right away. It's one of those things that acknowledges what it is. Like, it doesn't play around. It's very tongue in cheek right away. Like, it does like the Memberberry references to what you like, the horror stuff, the grindhouse stuff. It just full accelerator.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because this was my introduction to Astron 6. I hadn't actually seen Cool Guys, and our friend DM Doyle of Brian and I, we're good buddies with him. He actually, this is like a core memory of the band.
Core memory unlocked.
So Brian and I are in a band together, and DM was also in the band, and this was kind of like when I had just joined. We watched this in the van while we were kind of traveling to a show somewhere. And this was like, he was so hyped to show me it. And then I was like, okay. So at this part, I was like expecting something kind of messed up, just knowing him the little bit I did at the time. And so right out of the gate, I was like, okay, yeah, this is intense. Is this just going to be intense like the whole time? But I thought it's interesting what Jordan said was he saw Cool Guys first. Yeah. And he's like, oh, I know that they start kind of like, not normal, but like a normal grindhouse movie, a normal summer movie, a normal whatever movie, and then they escalate. I didn't have that, so like knowledge yet. So I'm like, okay, it's just gonna be this messed up movie. So then when we finally did get to the end, I was just like, what on earth?
Tone of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyways. So after that crazy intro scene, there's a bunch of scenes kind of establishing characters. I'm just going to kind of gloss over them a little bit.
Sure.
So we already talked about Ahab. He's sort of the film's protagonist. He's the one-eyed vigilante. He's got a grudge against the killer, who we find out is actually named the Fuckman, and it's spelled Fuchman. His name is Chris Fuckman. So it's his last name, even though that obviously, it's dumb, but it's... Okay, so the next scene after that crazy intro that we just talked about is we see a gentleman with blonde hair. He's being interrogated in a police station. His blonde, it's kind of like dyed blonde, like sticking up. He looks kind of crazy. And his name we find out is Twink, and he's being interrogated by the officer named Stiegel. And we're kind of getting the impression that he's asking where he was. You know, when was the last time you saw your dad, type of thing. And we get the impression that something also happened to Twink's dad. So we get a little bit of a flashback here. Twink's in a car with his dad. His dad's going back and forth, kind of like yelling at him a little bit, like, I can't believe I had to pick you up from the police station again. This is the third time, blah, blah, blah. Basically, he's like, Twink is a sex worker, and he keeps kind of getting picked up by the police. So he's
selling himself on the streets.
Yeah, they're going back and forth, and it's, Twink is obviously upset, and his dad's upset, and his dad says something along the lines of like the smartest thing your mother ever did was get away from you, and it kind of was like, oh, like, okay.
Deep cuts.
So right now, we know that Twink is a sex worker. He's got not the best relationship with his dad, and his mom is not in the picture. We don't know why or anything yet. It's funny though, because when he's talking to the police officer, he's like, yeah, he dropped me, and I work at a pizza and pop shop, like trying to like cover it up.
And you really get this like feeling about the dad's like, oh, this guy sucks. This guy's a dick. And it kind of comes back around later. And I think that kind of
abusive family kind of job.
It's like he's trying to do the best he can with his son, who's obviously things have gone wrong.
In his eyes, yes.
Twink looks like a failed member of like a crappy boy band.
Or like a gutter punk band in the 90s.
There you go. Yeah,
remember that 90s Nick show Roundhouse?
Oh, like a, yeah.
Remember where they're all dancing and everything?
Yeah.
That's the outfit would be on that show. So
that's true, yeah.
If you don't know that out there, go look it up.
Whenever my life gets me so down, I know I can go down. Yeah, come on.
To something. I don't know the words. I just know the melody.
I mean, I just know that part. Anyway, the Roundhouse. What a nice callback. So we cut back. The police officer lets him go. Basically, we find out Twink's dad was killed by the man. He's very upset. But we kind of see now that, he goes to like work the street pretty much with his friend who's named Walnut, who is another character.
They're going to work.
Yeah, we basically see him going to work. This guy pulls up in a car. Walnut's like, apparently Twink is 16, even though he looks at least like 23, 24.
He's like late 20s.
Yeah, but Walnut's like, he'll suck your dick till your nose bleeds to the guy in the car. And we kind of see him. What a sale,
really.
Yeah, we kind of see him doing this, and as he's doing it, he's trying to steal the guy's wallet, and the guy catches him, and then Walnut comes and hits him, and he's like, what's wrong with you? He's 16. Like, what? You just sold him. Anyway, gets mad. They go around the corner. He's like, how much did you get? And turns out Twink didn't get anything. He's very upset with him. But then we kind of get a little bit of a flashback. We see Twink's dad burning to death. So at this point, we've kind of seen several graphic murders and like
it's after a graphic sex scene with the fuckman and his dad.
Yeah. Don't skip that part.
Brian's like, yeah, man, come on, it's the best
Hold
part
on
of
a
the movie.
second. Aren't we forgetting something?
So we see, I forget how it gets here, but we kind of see what happened to Twink's dad. He and murders him.
And murders him, not the Twink.
And murders him.
Not
and
Twink.
then
Twink witnesses the aftermath.
Twink witnesses his dad on fire. And it's just like, oh my God. And there's this cool like, bow, 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 bow synth going on.
While his father is burning alive.
Yeah.
The worst part about that entire scene, one is the walking away after he's done with his dad. But the dog is watching the entire time. His like little dog.
Oh, the little dog,
is
right.
watching this whole thing go down.
Okay. So we had this flashback. We had this flashback, and then the police officer lets him go. So I had some stuff mixed up a little bit. But then we meet our Father John Sullivan,
the other lead character. Really.
Yeah, he's one of the band of misfits, I guess, if you want to call it. We kind of get a little bit of a party formed in this. So we find out he's going to be helping Twink in his time of need, and we kind of see him, and he's talking to
what's the old priest?
Yeah, who's the old priest's name?
I don't know. He just has white. His eyes are whited over.
And why is that old priest sleeping in that dingy basement?
They're supposed to say he's like sick or something. I don't know.
He's in his Afghan.
Okay, so we've met Ahab, we've met Twink, we've met Walnut, and now we meet Father John Sullivan. He's kind of a young priest. He's tasked by the church to kind of find and stop the f***man. We don't get that just yet, but he's deeply conflicted trying to balance his faith with everything he's kind of seeing. So we get a scene after that. He's talking to his father. It's a priest that's just like in a bed with like white out over his eyes, and we're kind of getting a little bit of backstory there.
It's not his father though. It's like his priest.
It's priest. Yeah, it's the father of the church.
Priest.
Yeah. The lead priest. So we're kind of at this point now, everything's been serious, but when we get to the priest, we're kind of getting a little bit of humor interjected here. We start to get a little bit of comedy. So we find out basically we at the precinct, we established that there was a guy going around killing fathers. There was a legend of the f***man, and then we cut to John Sullivan waiting outside for Twink. He says, "Hello, Andrew," and introduces himself. So Twink's real name is Andrew. Twink states, "My father called me Andrew, it's Twink," and spits directly in his face. John Sullivan and Twink are this is how they get connected. And then the church's mission was Father Sullivan is ordered by his superiors to find Ahab, the guy who was in the very first scene, the gentleman with the patch and the trench coat.
So real quick, how did he refer back to Ahab though? Like the lead priest, like
he raised him.
He raised.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was like an orphan who raised him because the fuckman killed Ahab's dad.
That's right.
The main father priest, whatever his name is, brings Ahab into the whole thing, and he's the one
into the fold.
Yeah, almost like trains him, I guess, or like to be able to kill the fuckman again someday.
Yeah. So basically, we find out, okay, the fuckman's back. The priest asks John to go find Ahab. He's the only one that can stop him. So we kind of get this like montage of him traveling, which is really funny too. He's like going through all of this crazy stuff, terrain, like in the winter, in the summer, his clothes are getting torn up as he's like running. And then he gets to this like log cabin.
He's in like the middle of the wilderness, basically the Canadian wilderness.
Yeah, the Canadian wilderness. Yeah. At this point, he's looking pretty rough. The door's open. He goes in. He says hello, and he gets scared by taxidermy on the wall immediately. Before anyone says hello back or anything, there's some acoustic guitar that starts playing, and we hear a man start to say, "In Native American mythology, the wolf was known as the night listener, a completely blind species, but with ears that could hear a pin drop anywhere in the forest." And then we cut back to Father Sullivan, who goes, "I don't think any of that is true." To which the man replies, "Get out." So again, like we start to see it being kind of funny here. We find out this is Ahab. Basically, the father tells him that the f***man is back. And he says, "Let me guess, they're all dads." And we kind of see a quick shot of these berries in a jar that say tasty berries and toxic berries, which we'll get to later. Ahab doesn't want any part of this initially, but then the father pleads with him. Father O'Flynn is the guy's name. Yeah, that's right. Father O'Flynn is dying and wants to see him. So this is how, this is kind of how he gets Ahab to come along. We see him tapping it.
This is an awesome scene.
It's one of the key scenes of the film.
We see him tapping a tree for syrup. He's like, "Sorry, I'm tapping this maple tree."
He just puts a faucet in the tree and hammers it. It's like,
yeah.
So if you don't know the tone of this film by now,
I mean, that will work if it was an actual maple tree.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Right.
But then Father John says, "That's not a maple tree." And then he says, "Then what the hell have I been making the syrup out of?" We get a little bit of a flashback scene of Ahab growing up. We see a girl being taken away from him. There's kind of like an orphanage thing. He thinks about it and says, "Father, give me 5 minutes." He packs a bunch of stuff up, and then they're on an airplane back to Father O'Flynn, which is funny because Father John didn't take an airplane there. He like went on foot. So it was like just another goofy joke. They go to the scene of the latest crime. Ahab enters the previous crime scene. He's looking around with a flashlight. He looks for like 2 seconds. We get a camera pan up, and it's Stiegel, the cop, who is interrogating Twink at the precinct. So the two know each other. Stiegel says, "How long has it been, Ahab? 12 years since you've been gone. And we haven't had a father tongue-kissed or otherwise." So he's implying that Ahab's back. Now these fathers are, being murdered again. He's trying to like kind of put the blame on him. They get into a little bit of an altercation, and it goes on, and then
you can tell there's like some like history with them, and that they've had been done this before. They've been involved before.
Yeah, and then after they kind of get over their little tussle, we see a pentagram on the wall, and Ahab is like, "What the f*** is that? Is f***ing some sort of Satanist now?" And then Stiegel says, "You and I both know Chris f***ing has been dead for 30 years. Then he rattled off a bunch of his nicknames: Father's Day Killer, Cannibal Man Killer, Fat Boy F***er, Cannibal Killer, a bunch of like crazy things, like really fast too. I don't know how this guy did it so fast.
Practice for hours.
Yeah, without laughing and everything. Anyways, we kind of find out that the girl being taken away in the flashback, her name's Chelsea, and that's Ahab's sister. They were kind of separated when his father was killed by the f***man, basically. He finds out she's working at a strip club, so they go to the strip club. We go back and we hear someone yelling on a phone. Ahab goes in and we see someone sitting there kind of, she turns around. Her name's Mary. So Mary's the owner of the strip club. Ahab calls Mary and she turns around. She goes, "It's Sleazy Mary." And and before stopping, she recognizes Ahab. Camera's like panning around. We see stuff kind of like on the walls, pictures of them. Ahab and Mary were a thing at one point, and he kind of left her. He's asking, her. We see him looking at photos of him and Mary. Mary's pregnant in the photos. We learn that she got an abortion, so he was going to be a father.
Do you learn that now, or do you learn that later?
We learn that, yeah. We do learn. They don't explicitly say it. You just see it on the
it's kind of set
bits
up.
and pieces.
Yeah, and the way the things that they're saying, and like you have to kind of put that together. I think
later they kind of allude to it more or better, and that's
why definitely acknowledge it. Yeah,
that's why he can't be killed by the f***man or whatever, or like he doesn't get killed because he's not actually a father.
Right. So basically, Father O'Flynn raised Ahab and Chelsea. was raised by nuns, so they were separated.
And they haven't seen each other since, apparently.
They haven't seen each other since, and then he's like, oh, okay, my sister's working at a strip club now. She's all grown up. They meet up, and he tells her, she's apparently still been investigating the when.
But you're glossing over the most important part of this entire scene.
What?
He's like into his sister.
Well, like early indications.
I don't think that's yet. That's not yet.
Oh, no, there's...
Is it that apparent?
Yeah, he's watching her strip and he's like, oh my God. And then he's like, Chelsea. Like he's watching a girl strip and like drooling
more
over
of
her.
shock though, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was more like the revelation of that's my sister. Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Chris was getting different vibes.
I got different vibes.
Chris got different vibes. All right, well, okay. Well, you weren't wrong, I guess.
They're not unfounded, and we'll see that later.
But basically, we find out that she's been kind of still investigating the F***man. Ahab says not to go after her, and she goes, why not? You did, and his reply is great. He says, well, I'm not my little sister. Ahab leaves. She says she's going to finish what he couldn't, and we cut to Ahab walking to his car with Father John waiting for him, and he's singing. Ahab's upset. He asks John to take him back to the airport, and then Ahab then goes off about how he tapped the trees in his forest and made syrups. And he says, but John, you let those syrups sit and they start to ferment, loses all its goodness. This is one of my favorite parts too.
It's so good.
Yeah. John then starts to understand what he's saying. He says, so he's trying to understand what he's saying. He's like, so Chelsea's like the syrup that sat too long. And then Ahab's like, why would you say that to me? He goes, oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood, brother. So you're like the wise old tree? And Ahab's like, I'm like a tree? That's a really mean thing to say to somebody, John. And then it cuts back and we get a whole different scene with Chelsea walking home. Someone's photographing her. It's actually Stiegel and his partner, who's eating, actually.
Great scene here, too.
Yeah, so his partner, he asks him something, and he replies, you said it, boss. Then he replies, chew your food, and there's like a little bit of a silence. The guy looks sad. His name's Mark, we find out. And there's a small pause, and then Stiegel says, sorry. He apologizes for saying that to him. But then we cut back to Ahab and John, who are still discussing what they were previously saying. Ahab's like, I meant there's syrup in my cabin fermenting as we speak. And then John said, I thought it was a metaphor. And then he explains what he thought he meant and says, I love you, goddammit. Oh, shoot. I'm not even supposed to say that. And then he's so upset that he took the Lord's name in vain. He says, I'm going to be saying Hail Marys till the cows come home. Gosh darn it. Then Ahab says, I'm like a tree. I said that. And John's like, yes, in a way, Christ. And then he covers his mouth. So there's like this thing going back and forth where his character like doesn't swear or take the Lord's name in vain, but then he does occasionally. And it's pretty funny.
John Sullivan's like kind of like this. He's like the comic relief, but like
he is,
but
for
the
sure.
entire cast is too, though. Like it's just set up that
Right.
way where like he's like the wacky comic relief, but like the other guys are still funny in their own different way. It's weird how they kind of make it all work.
But the jokes are so like out of tone. Like it is really funny, but it's like it's funny. It's so hard to explain. Like I don't know how to explain the jokes tone in this film or the humor's tone.
Hopefully, if you're listening to this, you've watched Father's Day. But if not,
You will watch it.
Pause this and go watch it because it's worth watching. At least as far as I'm concerned. So anyways, we cut back to Chelsea and she's with Walnut and they're at Walnut's, I think. Or is it Chelsea's? I forget.
It's Chelsea's.
Yeah.
Okay. They're at Chelsea's. Walnut and Twink are there with her. They're kind of just casually talking. And we find out Walnut's going to be a dad as they're talking. So, it's just like kind of in passing. But then it's like, oh, wait, he got someone pregnant. He's going to be a dad. And then a little bit later, the lights turn off out of nowhere and we get a crazy synth hit.
Because Chelsea and Twink are like, what? You're going to be a father? Like they get concerned about it.
Yeah.
She also stomps his walnuts too.
She does. Yeah. He's like, you popped my nards or something. I forget what he says. But then, so the lights cut off. Basically, as soon as we find out Walnut's going to be a dad, and then the f***man's just tearing Walnut's throat out right in front of Chelsea and Twink. Then the f***man pulls out Walnut's hog and bites it off. in one of the worst scenes ever to be filmed. You see it.
Classic man.
That zany old man got him again.
Yeah.
If you've made it this far into the film, you're doing just fine.
And we're about 30 minutes in at this point.
Yeah.
So it's an hour and a half, I think. Yeah, hour and 40 minutes. So
Just to point out, though, the biting off of the hog is very, let's say, tastefully done.
The special effects team did a good job.
Yeah, it's very horrifying to see it because he really like licks his lips and like really gets in there and like really plays it up, which is horrible.
Yep.
Yep, you got it.
And it's like a donut or a cake or something. It looks like, and he rips it off. Like
it's like it's like something with some give. So you gotta like some effort to like tear it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But I mean, like it's okay. It's horrible.
Some sort of soft serve mushroom.
Yeah.
Soft serve mushroom. Jesus. Oh boy, that'll be the reel right there. The soft serve mushroom. Timestamp it. Yeah. So anyways, Walnut is killed basically. He starts choking Twink, and the lights are out, and then Ahab gets there.
He throws Twink at Chelsea though, which is really good.
Yeah, he throws Twink at Chelsea, and it kind of like we don't know what happened to them really at this point. We see Ahab. He gets there. He busts in the room, and then he gets a fishbowl in the head as soon as he walks in this dark room. And we find out it's actually Twink. They thought he was the fuckman. They thought he was still there. They must have been just running around the apartment or something. That was a pretty crazy scene. Their friend just got killed, but then immediately after that, we cut to all three of them, Twink, Ahab, and Chelsea at the dining room table.
Covered in blood.
They're covered in blood.
Everywhere.
They're on the table where Walnut's hog got eaten. So they must have pushed him off of it.
The hog eating table.
We hear a knock at the door, and it's Stiegel. So they're like, oh, shit.
There's a dead guy here, and then Stiegel shows up, and they're going to think Ahab is the man again because of the situation.
Right. So like, how do we get out of here? And Chelsea's like, if you let me help you with the f***man case, I'll get Stiegel off your back here. And yet another great scene. She opens the door and she's like in lingerie, like in like a sexy outfit. And she's like, oh, Stiegel.
Not covered in blood anymore. Like the blood's completely off of her. Yeah.
Not covered in blood. 2 seconds. And then he's like, oh, I heard you talking to some people. And he's like, yeah, just some friends. And then we see Ahab and Twink dressed as women. And they walk right by him. And just to paint this picture for you, Ahab has a very full beard, and he has an eye patch
with a fake eye on it.
It's like a drawn eyeball, like taped over it, and it's so funny, it's so ridiculous, and it totally worked. And they sneak out, and then they then they get in the car, and it's like daytime.
Yeah, it cuts to day, and there was absolutely night.
Which. I think that inconsistency, I think, is just more funny than anything, whether they meant to do it or not.
Or they're like, oh, crap, we have to refilm the scene. It's daytime.
I just don't think they cared.
I don't think so either. There's plenty of other jokes, like with the train later and stuff, that just do things like that intentionally. So anyways, they got away. They drive away. They're still dressed in these crazy outfits. It's incredible. There's like a super crazy amount of like blush and eyeliner on them and stuff. Ahab, basically, we find out he lied and he wants to keep her away from the f***man. And we find out that Father O'Flynn was killed by the f***man. Kind of his head is like delivered in a box to Father Sullivan. So now we've kind of got our band of misfits form. Ahab and Twink are kind of going off. Ahab goes to this grave, basically, and it's got this like stick sticking out of the ground, just like where it's marked, a grave. And he's like, Twink's like, what's going on? Why are we here? And he starts digging it up, and he's like, ooh, ooh, ooh. And then we find out when he opens it up, it's just filled with a bunch of guns and stuff.
Because the cross says dad on it, I think. And so it's
the cross says
we're
dad,
digging up your dad, and Ahab just says, dig, dig, dig. And so you're setting up like this whole scene of like, now they're showing like him getting... he's going to go after him now. Before he was kind of not going to do it.
Montage of that.
Yeah. So now he's like, we're going after him now, so I got to get all my guns. Kind of like, what's that one movie, amazing movie, John Wick.
Oh, okay.
He's going underground. He's getting he's digging. He's getting the dad's stash. He's getting ready to go after.
Right. So we have our quest now. So Twink and Ahab are together. John Sullivan just found out that Father O'Flynn was murdered, and then there's a great scene of him kind of doing a mass in church. It kind of starts out normal. He's like thanking people for being there. He's talking about grief. He starts to lose it a little bit, talking about death, that white elephant in the room. He says, like many, Father O'Flynn was taken from us too early. I know many of you are asking, wasn't he like 100 years old? Honestly, I don't know. The poor man could only enjoy boiled water. Like,
there's a guy in the front row whose mouth is just open the whole time.
Yeah.
Like one of the people at the church.
Which shout out to, just here's a little fun movie fact. Shout out to a movie called Repossessed. I don't know if you guys ever saw that movie with Linda Blair from The Exorcist, but there's also a funny priest in that movie with a guy hanging with his mouth open in the middle of church. So very similar.
Geez.
Look for it. Repossessed.
So this scene has like Father John just like losing it, like questioning basically his entire faith because, you know, Father Flynn was like a good guy and he was taken from him.
As he's giving this like sermon or wherever, he's like, "Where's God now? Is he under the podium? Oh, hello!" Like doing like voices like that.
Yeah, he's like setting up like you see in the beginning of the movie where he's like, I don't want to swear because I don't want to offend God, but then all of a sudden like he's like, why would God let this happen? So he's like questioning everything now at this point, kind of losing it.
Yes, his faith is being tested.
This is the turn.
Yeah. He's like, "Oh, look at me. I'm God. I sit on my fat ass." And he does like this thing. And he's like, nothing. No lightning storms. No lightning, no storms, not a raindrop. And I just ripped him a new one. And then we see him like flip through the Bible and it's cut out and it reveals a gun. And he starts like putting a silencer on it. And the churchgoers audibly gasp. And he's like, "I find myself asking, what would Jesus do? Where is he? Moved a great big rock. Is he himself going to punish the wicked? No," he says. Keep in mind, he hasn't said one curse word yet, really.
Yeah.
And was
throughout
mad.
the movie.
Yeah. So after that, you know, he says his piece. He storms out. It's like really hype. And this one guy gets up.
That's my favorite joke in the movie.
This one guy gets up in the pew and he goes, "Let's tear this place apart." And it like zooms in on him. And like the expectation is everyone's going to get up and like be hyped. And there isn't anyone that gets up.
Nobody just look
Not
at
one
him.
person.
So he just like looks around for a little bit and then he sits back down.
I love that.
So now we've got
A horrible, horrible, horrible scene with the man.
yeah, I guess.
Oh, is this the injection scene?
Mm-hmm.
No, this is him just
Yeah.
ripping someone apart, isn't it?
Oh, I thought
No, he's like chopping his own finger off for some
Yes.
reason, and then we see
He's
a
just
bunch of
hanging
like
out, chopping his finger off.
yeah, we see like a bunch of blood and guts and gore, and he is killing and raping some other father.
Guys around him.
An unnamed father.
Hail the Manicus, they're saying. And then we see the pentagram on the walls and some photos of our ragtag group, Chelsea, Ahab, somebody we can't see too
Ritualistic,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
A great rear shot of man's butt.
Which, yeah, this isn't the worst. That's not the worst scene. That's still a rough scene, but there's definitely a worse scene.
He's
But
using a foot to like carve out a liver or something.
Like dig into it.
there's a worse scene,
It's all like
all right?
rubber
Is this
feet,
what I'm
yeah.
saying? So then after that happens, we kind of establish, okay, there's some satanic happening with the fuckman. We cut to Ahab and Twink. They're shirtless in the woods shooting at cans, and they're missing every shot.
And they're not that far away either. They're like right.
They're not far, yeah.
well, and Ahab's supposed to be like this like badass guy with all these guns who can like, you know, kill things, and he can't hit a can from like
Yeah.
5 feet away.
So they're just missing every shot. Father John comes into frame. Ahab's like, "Padre," and Twink goes, "Oh Christ," and John goes, "Not quite, but close." And Twink's like, "What?" And he's like, "Close to Christ," because he's a priest. Then he tells them Father O'Flynn was killed, and he said he wants to join them. And then Twink kind of mocks him. He says, "Look, you know, I'm sorry about your buddy, but this isn't for you." Then Father John takes out his silenced pistol, shoots one shot, and hits all 3 cans that they were trying to hit many shots previously. So, okay, he's their sharpshooter. He's part of the party.
It's like Wanted, that terrible movie with Angelina Jolie where they curve the bullets.
I like that movie.
Oh,
What? How?
Yeah. What do
I
you mean
never
how?
saw
I
it.
never saw it.
It's so bad it's good.
I just saw the commercials like, this is going to be so dumb.
It was pretty good.
The guy from your boy from Split's in it.
Who?
He's the main guy.
I never seen it.
James McAvoy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Put it on your list.
What does Twink say when they get in the car as they're like leaving? They decide to like go get the when he's like, oh great, more girls or something like that.
Oh yeah, they're like, where do we have to go? Back to the strip club.
that's
It's
right.
like, oh great, exactly where I wanted to go. Like, more naked girls. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So then we do cut back to the strip club. We find out the f***man's there. He's basically killed most of the people, and we get back. There's a stripper who was in there. She was actually there last time. I kind of glossed over her. She's topless, and she has like a chainsaw for some reason. Probably just to have a topless stripper with a chainsaw in the movie, I would imagine.
Shout out to the 80s film Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers.
Is that, you think, what they were?
That's probably part of it. It has to be. I mean, come on.
And prior to this, he kills Sleazy Mary too.
Yeah, Mary gets killed by him, and then he's fighting this chainsaw stripper, and Chelsea has headphones on, so we kind of like, she can't hear it. She's just like painting her toenails, and this fight's going on in the background where the f***man ultimately wins, and then he hits Chelsea, and she gets kidnapped.
She also uses marital aids to like whip him in the face with too. You know what I mean?
Marital aids.
Marital aid. Why are you saying this is an explicit episode, Chris? You can say,
But also
marital aids. Is that what you
Defined
call
as
it?
marital aids.
Marital aids are in your home.
Rubber
The-
hangers.
The killing with the chainsaw was a horrible scene. Pretty bad.
Why don't you go ahead and run them through it?
No, she just the stripper with the chainsaw gets her face pushed down on it while it's turned on. It's horrible. And then the f***man just pushes her head right down and just tears up her teeth and stuff. You see the whole thing. Ugh. Not the worst scene in the movie, which I'll mention later when we get to it.
Oh, everyone knows what the worst scene is.
Yes, every man,
We all know.
every male.
And you will too out there.
So fun fact before we even get to that scene, I told both my brother-in-law and sister to watch this, and at that scene, my brother-in-law stopped watching it.
I don't know if it's the same scene we're talking about though, but we'll
Okay.
get to it later.
Oh, it's not. I know this. I think I know the scene you're talking about,
Yeah.
but
How can it not be the same scene?
We'll talk about it. We'll get when we get there.
Preference, I guess.
But also,
All right.
Chelsea gets taken away by the f***man at this point.
right. The whole point of this was that Chelsea gets abducted by the f***man here.
He doesn't kill her.
He doesn't kill her yet. Well, we don't know that yet, but we find out later that he doesn't kill her. He abducts her. So anyway,
Well, he doesn't murder her like he murdered everybody else. So he went
Right.
to the strip club to get her.
yeah, that's true. Everyone else is dead there except she's gone. So that's a good point. So basically our trio, our ragtag group gets there late. They see everyone dead. And then we see that Sleazy Mary is not quite dead just yet.
I don't like this scene at all.
So yeah, she's in bad shape. She has blood all over her. And the first thing he asks, he's like, is he still here? And she says, I'm so cold. She grabs Ahab. Hold me. She says, Mary, what's happened to my sister? And this is where she says, kiss me and I'll tell you what happened to her. And Ahab goes, no, gross. Why?
She's covered in there's blood all over her mouth and like coming out of her mouth.
Yeah, she's like spitting up blood.
Yeah. She says, you fucking hurt me, kiss me, and I'll tell you. And then we cut to Twink, who's looking away, and he kind of shrugs like, yeah, go ahead, I guess. So he goes to kiss her, and he like doesn't even touch her lips. He just goes like, mwah. And he says, there. Now where is she? And she's like, you didn't even touch. And he's like, yeah, well, I did. You probably just didn't feel it because of your dying. And then she grabs his face and like a bunch of blood gloops out and like forces him to kiss her with all those gross blood.
So gross.
Somehow, after this scene, after they kiss, she knows that they were in a white truck heading east, despite just being shotgun blasted and laying there. She knew the direction they left. Anyway, he gets up and says thanks to Mary. She grabs his leg and says to take Chelsea's scrapbook. We cut back to him like shaking her hand off of his leg, which is really funny. All right. So now we've got basically the first, I would say, 2 acts done here. We're kind of getting to the third act where they're going to go after the f***man now.
Yeah, I think this is where the movie started to like slow down, where it's like, okay, all right, let's go. What's going on?
Well, there's a lot of stuff they jammed into that first bit. So
Like the first half hour, 40 minutes, I'm just like, this is great. This is crazy. This is amazing. And then it's kind of, there's a noticeable dip until we get to the end, which we'll talk about. But
So, yeah, they get in a car. They basically find the and they catch up to him. And there's this scene where they're like busting like into him with the car. They're like ramming it into them.
Which is crazy because he had such a head start on her that they just kind of like like on a side road. They're like, oh, hey, we found him out of nowhere. Like, it's just like, how the hell did you find him?
Just happenstance.
They just wanted to film a cool car scene is what it was. Yeah. Ahab and John were in the car and Twink. Ahab jumps over to the truck. Twink and John crash the car. Ahab falls off the truck, so he's separate from them.
Twink does try to get into the truck too, but he gets pushed back over or something.
He does, and he comes back in. He says, I didn't get her. Like, obviously. Yeah. But they did all their own stunts and stuff.
Because it was a very low speed scene. You could tell they weren't going very fast because they were doing their own stunts.
Right.
Well, yeah, this is all on their own budget. Yeah, these are probably their own guys.
There was like a Saturday afternoon. There was like, oh, we got to go do this. Be careful.
Yeah. So then Father John and Twink look at the engine of the car, and Father John, who's been, averse to taking the Lord's name in vain and using curse words for the whole film, pretty much, he goes, "God damn fucking thing sucks." And it's just like, doesn't even like get mad that he said it at this point. Nobody bats an eye. And then we cut to Ahab, who has some sort of pipe in his stomach from falling. And he says, they're all like, "Oh my God." And he's like, "Nope, I'm fine." He pulls it out. And he's like, while he's pulling it out, he's like, "Ah!" So he's like screaming, pulling it out.
Yeah, so Ahab, I like this part. Ahab passes out, and Father John tries to close his eyes like they do in movies. And he swats his hand away.
Yeah. He passes out onto the engine and is like steaming a little bit too. And then Twink asks if he's dead, and then Father John says yes, and he tries to close his eyes. That's what happened. So then we says, well, we got to get him out of here. And he says, what about the Jeep? And he says, I think we could fix it. So then they start they're like dragging Ahab, and then we get like the shittiest green screen ever, and the car explodes behind them, which is awesome. Then we get to the woods scene. So they're stranded in the woods here. If you happen to watch Chow Boys, which is another short film by these guys, it's very similar to this scene in Father's Day. You'll definitely notice some parallels, but it's honestly such a funny scene that I get why they sort of redid it again. Anyway, they set up camp for the night. Ahab's sort of dying from his wound. There's some flashbacks about Ahab. We find out at this point that the f***man killed Ahab's dad right in front of him. We see that
Ahab's training to become like a fighter type of thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The f***man says, he says, what the hell? Does he say this to Ahab? He says, "You taste like I hate or something like that." and then he tears out Ahab's dad's teeth.
Yeah.
And this is when you get the worst scene in the entire movie.
Oh, this is the worst scene. Okay.
Oh, this is the shove.
We find out how Ahab lost his eye.
That was the worst thing.
This is the worst scene? What?
Yes, I think that's worse than the other ones.
That's his. I don't think it's worse than the other. I know what you think.
I don't either.
Is.
You get the whole setup of how Ahab lost his dad and everything that was going on, how Ahab watched it and stuff. And then the f***man used the box cutter to cut through his eye. Like it was like oh God, it's so horrible.
And you see it. Yeah. And it's just like slices right through it. He's like, it's a little kid too.
Yeah. And they use like some kind of gooey, like water, like ball type of thing. So it looks like really horrible whenever he cuts them.
Like a gel type thing.
It's terrible.
Yeah, so here we cut to a montage of him training with this martial artist, kind of growing up and getting stronger because he wanted to kill the man who killed his father. And then we find out that through this flashback like scene where he's like kind of dying, sleeping in the woods, we find out the whole intro of the movie was actually a setup. And Ahab thought he killed the f***man at the start. It was actually a decoy set up by the f***man. So Ahab served 10 years in jail. And then we find out that that's why at the intro he wasn't killed. Ahab kind of keels over at this point, and then Twink and John start kind of freaking out. They're hungry, and then they find berries on Ahab and they eat them. So this is where I brought up earlier. Remember the toxic berries? Yeah, toxic berries and tasty berries. So as they're eating them, they go, "These things taste like," insinuating that they are eating the toxic berries, not the tasty berries.
Yeah, because we didn't mention that Father John Ahab grabs a bottle of them before they leave his cabin in the beginning.
Yeah.
He grabs the wrong one.
Grabs the berries. So now we get to what is probably the worst scene of the movie, which happens right after Chris's least favorite scene.
This is Jordan's favorite.
This is probably the most gross scene.
I love it. The best.
Yeah, the man is once again doing some ritual bullshit, like covered in blood. He takes a syringe, and you see this very close up. He injects it into the tip of his dick. Some people, yeah.
I remember the first time we were watching that in my apartment, the first time we saw this, man, we were like, wow, that movie went there.
Yeah, he injects it, and when he takes the needle out, you see it like spray out, too. It's just a horrible scene.
Nice effects.
Yeah, and we see, basically he takes like some blood, and we see Chelsea, and she's there, like chained up. He like smears it on her, and she goes, "I'm not a dad."
Wait, he also cuts it.
Yeah.
With a
Oh,
knife.
right.
Yes.
Cuts his tip.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's what he rubs on Chelsea.
Right. The injected cut.
I mean, this isn't any better than the eye, but it's still, the eye is way worse. I mean, it's still worse, but not, oh, God. They're both bad.
I don't know, man.
Let's put them up head to head.
Let's have a
hold
poll.
on. Let's stop for a second. Let's
have a poll for the
We
listeners.
should, yeah.
So, if you're in the comments out there,
Yes.
what would you prefer?
Tip or eye?
An eye cut to a child or an injected tip cut?
Yeah.
And smeared onto it a
It's
victim.
got to be the whole scenario.
You be the judge.
Just let us know in
You'd
the
be
comments
the-
what you would hate worst.
Yeah, or like more.
Yeah. Or both. I mean, if you like both, it's fine. We don't
You
judge.
know what? Just do what you want.
Yeah.
Just do it. Yeah. Hey.
Don't yuck my yums. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, Jesus. Anyway, we cut back to our boys at the campfire. They're tripping balls. Twink is just yelling, "You don't know me. You don't know me." And then he looks at Ahab. He goes, "Aye, boy." And then John's just being paranoid. Their voices start to echo and stuff. We sort of get like some
Tripping out.
Some like if you've ever seen Black Hole Sun music
Fear and
video
Loathing.
for Soundgarden, yeah, or that. It kind of has like that effect going on. They start to wonder what's under Ahab's eye patch. And then all of a sudden John hears something in the woods. He says, "Jesus, is that you?" And then like a tiger face shows up and it says, "You guys are."
Is it Twink or John jamming the berries into,
I enjoyed this part.
into Ahab's
Oh
mouth?
yeah, they're feeding Ahab the berries. I forget who.
Aw.
Who's totally passed out.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
goes on for a while now, and we kind of see like Ahab kind of waking up a little bit and seeing a little bit of this. And as the scene ends, like who was it? Was it
John was on top of Twink.
John was on top of Twink, and he's like got like a rock, and it like ends where we think he may have killed Twink here.
Does he say like go to sleep or something? Go to sleep.
Something like that. It's just it's a super funny scene. And then it cuts. He wakes up. He's got no clothes on. It's day. And he's laying in just like this field. And Ahab's fine. And he says, "Yeah, someone must have fed me my tasty berries." And then Father John gets up and full out swinging and just runs away.
And Ahab's like dreams. He has a dream of his sister.
Yeah.
That's kind of alluding to something that happens later too. I think that Chris was pointing out.
Oh,
earlier.
yeah. I skipped over that.
Carnal
Yeah.
desires.
Oh, right. So Ahab's.
Marital aids with your sister. With his sister.
Right. And
This
it's like
is marital age shop.
Don't talk about him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's right. And it shows him like sleeping with women, and the one
Yes.
girl's like, "Baby, I feel pregnant," and then he says, "I have no choice, he'll come for me." And then he moves out of the frame, and there's another lady there, and she goes, "I feel pregnant too." Yeah, okay. Twink was naked in the pool too.
Yeah,
I forget. I don't know why. Anyways, and then they wake up. We find out they're fine. Blah blah blah.
We get a commercial here.
We get the commercial break. So this is back to the start. It's the Astron 6 late night movie will return in a moment, and it's super funny. It says coming up at 3 Star Raiders.
Star
And
Raiders.
it's just like this really special effects in space, starring Blake Starr, Bric-a-Brac, and a woman. And like, yeah.
It's like an obvious thing of like Star Trek or Star Wars because like the one guy
Yeah.
looks like
Knockoff.
Yeah, looks like what's his name?
Battlestar Galactica kind of thing.
It's super over the top.
Flesh Gordon.
Say Flesh Gordon.
Did you say Flesh Gordon?
Yeah, I did. It's real. Look it up.
All right.
Put it in the comments
God.
if you looked it up.
Anyway, God. Flesh Gordon, everyone. You can buy it at our merch
Put in-
store.
And Flesh Gordon and the Cosmic Cheerleaders.
Yes.
Put in code watchpals20 for 20% off.
20% off your Flesh Gordon, everyone.
Support your local video stores.
Yeah.
Pick up your Flesh Gordon rewinder now.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So
Cut to the water
Opens up.
park.
It opens up.
yeah, there's more to
Yes.
the commercial, but we're
Wait,
so
hold
then-
on. The VCR rewinder opens up like when the dude cut his
Jesus. Oh God.
You must inject the needle into it, then it'll open up.
Yeah, that's
You
the
rewind
secret.
rewind the cassette.
Sir, do not put that into the rewinder.
All sales are
I
final.
warned you.
All sales are final.
Anywho,
Anywho, I forget how they found out that the man was at this like abandoned water park, but he is. And there's a scene where they have to like get this key out of this like kind of like dying or dead body's mouth. It's pretty funny.
I thought the guy was alive.
He's kind of alive. I don't know.
He's like in a 9 Inch Nails video. He's just like
yeah.
he's seriously like he's just like in the corner. He's all like he's blindfolded. He's like stitched mouth or
I'm
something.
pretty sure that was one of the other like the guys who like isn't usually acting in their group.
Like a writer.
Yeah, that scene was like a weird like first person
Yeah,
exploration.
Yeah, because
scene.
don't they make Sullivan do it?
they do. They're like he's like
Twink or something?
they're looking for a key to get into this door basically, and they find that like gross body and and they basically convince Father John Sullivan to do it. They're like, it's cool. Yeah, I'd love to be you. I'd love to get to do stuff like this every day. Are you kidding me?
doesn't Twink say like I do it, but I don't like dead people or something like that?
Something I forget, yeah.
Goofy.
So he has to like tear this key out of this guy's tongue, and it like bleeds everywhere. And they're like,
And he
and they're all
smacks himself
laughing.
in the face when he gets blood over his face.
Yeah. So anyway, the key opens the door, and there's Chelsea passed out in chains. It's actually kind of like one of the only sort of sad-ish emotional parts of the movie. But they find out she's still alive. They're carrying her out, and they leave basically. And then we cut to, again, one of my favorite subtle jokes. We cut to a train coming through a tunnel. And then as soon as the train is out of the tunnel, the guys are there like walking behind it. Like it would have been impossible for this to happen. So it was just clearly funny how they did it. Ahab's holding Chelsea. The other two are kind of walking, and then they see the man up on some higher ground. So the second they do this, Ahab drops Chelsea's body. He pulls out a gun. Twink is like pointing up in the air, and when Ahab points his gun in the air, he shoots through Twink's hands, and he's like, ah! He runs up there. The man's got like this limp that we kind of talked about earlier. He runs up there instantly. He shoots him with a silent pistol and then a shotgun. And then there's like a conveniently placed brick. It's like brand new brick. It's right there, and he bashes the man's face in with it. He stomps it until it's like mush. And then he picks it up and he tosses him off. It's like a dam, and it's clearly a dummy. And he's like very hyped up, and he goes back to the guys like, "Did you guys see that?" He's like, "Oh, ooh, yeah." He's like, "You shot Twink."
This seems like where it starts to like drag a little bit because like up to this point, but like it's so crazy because the in the entire movie has been like some elusive thing, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, there he is! He's right there!"
All of a sudden he killed him and bashed him. But that's part of the humor, right? It's like, you know, if you're looking at the runtime so far, you know, there's still some movie left. So you're like, where's this movie gonna go?
Yeah, there's about 35 minutes left
but
at
the
this point.
is like just wandering around somewhere, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna just shoot him." It's like so easy at this point, but you find out like at this point I was like, "Come on, what the hell's going on?" And then you find out later what actually happened, but you get the idea that. Why was it so easy? There was no big battle, nothing. And then you look at the runtime, and you're like, oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah. So basically, like, Ahab's all hyped. He's like, let's go finish him off. And then we get like this faraway shot of them up on the dam, and he's like almost like high stepping to get back down there, running real goofy. We cut to Chelsea in the hospital. There's almost like some Sarah McLachlan type music playing. They all kind of went their separate ways. We see Twink tearing down a bunch of like hunky dudes from a mirror to show his face. Ahab's just like in a grocery store.
There's kind of like this montage of them returning back to
normal routines, their lives. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yep. And then we see Yeah, we see Twink. He's like with some women, and they're like, "Yeah, you're definitely gay." and then we see another scene where Twink's in bed, and then a cover from under a blanket. Father John pops out, insinuating that they had sex. Then we cut to Chelsea back in the hospital after this montage, and her eyes are like very black, almost like possessed. Father John is then clearing out Father O'Flynn's stuff from his like weird basement room. He pages through. He finds this creepy book about the f***man, and then he pages through it, and he actually sees Ahab's picture in it. He starts reading it, and then he's like, "Oh, shit." So he calls Ahab, who's asleep, with like a poster of his sister, who he's like kissing in his bed. He's calling basically to warn him, and then there's a knock at the door. It's his sister, Chelsea. So she's just like, "Ahab, like I never got to thank you for saving me," type of thing. We cut to Twink and John driving to Ahab, and John explains the ancient tome to Twink. He says that here's where we get kind of like the whole, this is what the f***man is.
Prophecy.
Yeah, the f***man appears each generation, f***ing and killing fathers until the host is extinguished. And then he sees but one, he that sees but one path shall stand in the way of the Manicus. So he that sees but one path. Ahab has he has one eye, he has an eye patch. So it's kind of saying that it's him.
Putting it together.
Yeah. We cut back to the hotel. Chelsea's kind of like coming on to Ahab. She starts making out with him. He pushes her off and he's like, "You're my sister. Not that I'm not attracted. Just, last time I saw you, you're this little kid, and I go away for 10 years. And then as he's saying that, she's like taking his pants off. And he stops and goes like, "Button," actually, to help her take them off. And he's like, and then he starts like continuing. So basically he ends up banging his sister at this point. We can clearly, she's possessed. The scene's way too long.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it's very graphic, and you can tell like in the middle while he's banging
Mid-coitus.
Mid-coitus, that he can see something's off.
Well, yeah, so he's like, they're doing it like doggy style, and she's like, "Me, Ahab," and then he turns into the man.
She turns into the fuckman.
Chelsea.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah.
Chelsea does. Yeah,
Chelsea turns into the man for like a half second and just goes, "Me, Ahab," and he shakes his head and he's like, "What the hell?" And it goes away. And then we start hearing, "Hail the Manicus" chants. She basically makes him finish inside of her. He's like, "No." And then a flash happens, and these robed figures are chanting, the same ones that were in with the man earlier. They have a sword, and they're going to stab Ahab. They smash his TV for some reason. Then Twink and John come in guns blazing to save him. And they unload all of their bullets into just one guy. They're like... So then there's like two other guys left. And they're out of bullets. Father John gets hit in the face with a wrench. And he's like, "Ah!" And then he just like goes to sit down in a hall. And when they cut to that scene, there's like no music or nothing. He's just like, "Ah!" Like holding his head. It cuts back... to the other two guys. They're kind of like wrestling and fighting.
Ahab grabs the one guy who had a sword on him.
Yeah, and Twink wrestles at one guy and shoots him in the face, and then we hear the other figure yell, "Mark, don't leave me." So this is where we find out that the robed guys helping the men are actually Stiegel, the police officer, and his buddy Mark, who he was mean to earlier. Then we see it was Stiegel that set Ahab up with the fake men at the start of the film. He says he killed the f***man, and then of course we see Chelsea again floating almost like Zool style in the bedroom. She goes like, "Ahab, you fool, you played right into my hands. With your seed I shall birth the most powerful f***man yet." She vanishes. Stiegel says glory to the f***man, happy Father's Day to Ahab, and then Ahab takes the sword and slices his head off. So now we're getting to basically the finale here. At this point, it's starting to get pretty crazy. Like, it was already pretty crazy, but now it's starting to get like...
Starting to get pretty crazy?
But, well, it's like
really ramping it up.
Going into like... Yeah. Ramping it
We're
up.
going into otherworldly places now.
Right. So we cut to John and Twink talking to Ahab. They're explaining everything, saying it's all in Father O'Flynn's book. John's like, "I need you to be brutally honest with me about what you and Chelsea were doing tonight." And Ahab's like... "Oh, talked, hung out, watched a bit of something. She didn't try to kill me or anything." And he's like... "No, she wouldn't try to kill you. She would try to have sex with you. So let's get real here."
It's like you're at this point that you're like, what are they going to do next? Like, it's really hard to like determine like what the hell could they possibly do at this
coming
point.
up
Yeah,
here.
it's just really confusing.
Yeah.
Like, again, it's the middle of this movie kind of drags a little bit. Here's where it's starting to be like, there's where can they go? Like they already killed the fuckman. What do they have next? Like are they gonna kill Chelsea? Is that the next point or what? And then this next scene is just like, oh my god, perfect.
So basically, yeah, at this point, he kind of admits that he had sex with his sister. And he's like, I was super drunk. And he's like, finally, he's like, fuck you guys if you say you wouldn't do the same. You've seen her, Christ. And he's like, with your sister? He's like, no, what's the it all along? You had got a grip on me. And John's like, weird, I don't remember reading anything about that. Anyway, he's like, we could go get an abortion, put this whole thing behind us. And he's like, but Chelsea's in hell. And then there's thunder. And then Twink says, change of subject, but can we go feed my cats real quick? I'll give you gas money. So we cut to the three. This is definitely the final act. They're sitting around a table in Twink's apartment with his cats. And they're like, are we sure about this? And then Twink goes, I was actually going to kill myself anyway, so two birds. So the plan is to go to hell to kill the f***ing by killing themselves to fight him. They discuss who should go first, who should do it. They say, like, you know, you're not going to do it. You're going to be scared, blah, blah, blah. And then Twink and John argue about how to do it. And then as they're talking, we hear a gunshot and Ahab shot himself.
Is the idea here that she will have another f***man?
Right. They're trying to stop the other
Stop the ritual.
Okay. Even though she's in hell.
So they're trying to get to Chelsea. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're like, did it work? I don't know. And then we zoom into Ahab. He's like on some kind of spirit trip. And then we hear, Ahab, remember me? And it's his jacket talking to him. And he's like, Jacket, there you are. And then he plops into a stop motion hell at this point.
Also, this is an amazing like set design, like just vision of hell. It's perfect for like this type of scene, this type of like.
For this movie too, yeah.
Yeah, for what they're going for their overall theme from that 70s vibe.
So it goes back to Twink and John, still alive, doing rock, paper, scissors to see who's next. And then we cut back to Ahab. He's like fighting weird demons in hell. And then all of a sudden, Twink pops up next to him and he goes, I lost. So this is hell, huh? It's not so bad. Then we hear a gunshot and John going, huh? But then he ends up in heaven, which is funny because he's a priest. And he's greeted by an angel playing piano. And then there's a bunch of topless angels. And he's like, is this hell? And then the guy goes, HE double hockey sticks, nah. You can have anything your heart desires in heaven, but you can never leave, he says. And a throwback to Cool Guys. This is the guy with the golden hand in Cool Guys is the angel here.
I didn't realize
if you saw Cool Guys, yeah. So it's they're always using their friends and stuff. So that's cool. So after that, we cut to Twink and Ahab. They're in like this icy plain. They're just walking and it's all snowy. So it's a totally different place in hell now. And Twink asks for one of Ahab's gloves. He's like, oh, it's so cold out here. I can't hear this stuff about gloves, like ignoring him. And then he's like, Twink. And he turns around and Twink has vanished. Then he's in some fiery place talking to his dead father, who says some really mean things to him. Twink's father. Ahab is now in a church after this. He gets kind of transported and he sees his father with Chelsea walking her down the aisle in a wedding dress. He takes off her veil and she's like a wolf or something. And then it kind of shows Chelsea marrying the f***man. So now we are back in heaven with John Sullivan. He's talking to the angels. He's trying to get him to take him to God. He's like, I got to get out of here. I got to go to hell. I got to help my friends. They're trying to kill the f***man. He's saying we can't leave. The angel's telling him we can't. And then he pulls the old, oh, look, what the hell is that? And then he grabs the angel. He takes him hostage with the gun and he demands that he be taken to God's office. So then the angel takes him to God's office and we see it open up and Lloyd Kaufman's there and he is God in this movie. So Lloyd Kaufman, very famous Trauma founder. He was the guy who I was talking about at the beginning who was kind of like selling the bootleg versions of this film, which is not cool. So this is where we see John Sullivan's talking to God, who's Lloyd Kaufman. He says he'll kill the angel if he doesn't let him. God says, he won't do it. And the second he says that, John shoots the angel and kills him. And he's like, oh, he's your move, old man. God's reaching for like this red button under this table that he's sitting at, like a desk. And then Father O'Flynn appears out of nowhere. And he's like, hold it right there, God. He has a gun pointed. He's like, get out of here, John. They do horrible things up here. He basically gets John out of, I don't know how John gets out of heaven, but he does. He runs away and then he ends up in hell. So then we're back in hell. I think we stay in hell now for almost the rest of the movie. We get some cool stop motion, like a big gate opens up and then this big monster, which is most likely the man, is there, like sitting in this like chair, and he has Chelsea chained up, and she has like a Princess Leia, like Jabba the Hutt, like slave Leia outfit on. Chelsea says, "Don't look into his eyes," which Ahab does immediately, and like he throws up, but he like throws up like his bowels,
like everything,
and like his guts,
Everything.
he can't move.
He like Stiegel and Mark are there laughing. The man gets up out of the throne, and as they're laughing, he accidentally steps on Mark, and Stiegel says, "Mark," again, before also getting stepped on, so they get killed twice, which is funny.
And as John hits, like he comes down from heaven and lands right in front of the man, he gets smacked, and his entire body gets cut in half. He's like, "Ah."
So Father John Sullivan falls from the sky into hell, hits like the pavement or whatever you want to call it, the ground. It looks hard, like it's like rocks. And he's like, "I made it." And as he gets up, he's like missing a tooth. He's all bloody from the impact, which is super funny. And then, he gets cut in half immediately.
He's still talking and everything. He's just in half. Like
he's still talking. The man's kind of walking over to Ahab to kill him. And then Chelsea is like connected with a chain. She pulls a chain to stop him. Oh, he held up, John held up the syrup that Ahab gave him, and he said, "Maybe now you'll take me seriously." And then he gets cut in half. That's what happened.
Yeah.
And then Mary comes, sleazy Mary comes, delivers the exact same punchline, and she throws the syrup at the man. That makes him shrink for some reason. We don't really know why. Nope. But basically it comes full circle. Ahab was like tapping these like trees basically to...
It's just the payoff to the syrup.
Yeah, the payoff to the syrup, yeah.
So basically, Sleazy Mary like saves Ahab by doing that.
She saves kind of that. She kills the man essentially. He turns into gets really small, and then they go, "He's just a baby," and he is like a little baby man. And then Chelsea jumps up both feet and just stomps him, and like guts everywhere. Mary picks up Ahab, and then he like pushes her off of him and goes to make out with Chelsea. And neither of them are, and they're all like, "God, come on." Chelsea vanishes as this is happening, and Father John yells, "Get an abortion!" before she's completely gone.
Because she's not actually dead, right?
Yeah, she's not actually dead. She vanishes back. Then Satan comes out, who is also God. So it's Lloyd Kaufman again. We find out he's God, and they're like, "We got you!" Or we find out he's Satan and God, and we find out he's got you. We did it. And he's like, "Yeah, you got me. Okay, I'll see you later." Like,
Yeah, you guys won. Yeah, whatever.
Very sarcastic. So they're like, "All right, how do we get out of here?" And then we see what's become of Twink. He's just like stuck in some muck, and he like can't move, almost like Han Solo, like carbonite, but it's like all like goopy. And he doesn't look alive at all. And Ahab's jacket's there too, and he goes, "Hey, my jacket." He's like, "My keys are in there," or something like that. So then they're like, "All right, how do we get out of hell?" And they're like, "Oh, well, just the same way we got in." Ahab takes his gun, he shoots himself in the head, and it goes, and it doesn't work. He just is like, "Oh," and then like this kind of like this like I don't even know how to describe the music playing. It's just like this like kind of goofy song, and they're like, "Oh no, we can't get out." He tries to do it again, so they're stuck there, and like, "How do we get out of here?" And they're like, "Maybe if we just hope really hard." And they're all like, "Hope, hope."
Start chanting it together.
Hope, hope, hope. And then it cuts. And the end scene is Twink, Ahab, and John Sullivan all dead in Twink's apartment.
Their bodies are just rotting.
With his cats on them. And then it slowly pulls away and the end credits come up. And that is the end.
So those characters are dead.
Yes.
And in hell forever.
Yeah, that's the one scene I remembered from the first time I watched it. I didn't remember anything else. But I remember that. I remember watching it like, "Oh, I remember this scene. That's the way they ended the movie. That's crazy."
Yeah. It's like, oh, like they're all dead in hell and didn't really accomplish anything.
No.
Yeah. So that's Father's Day.
That's Father's Day. Jeff, thank you for giving us the recap of Father's Day. Like I said, it was a wild ride the entire ride through. So let's go back and give our critiques or feedback for Father's Day. Jeff, why don't you go first?
Well, yeah, I picked this one because I like it. I really like it. It's just like a goofy, like the humor's right up my alley. It's just like it's it does enough things that just made me go, what the, like, to this day that I still haven't seen other movies do quite the same. And I just really like this troupe of Astron 6 in general. I really like all their stuff, even though they kind of don't do it anymore. I hope if you guys happen to hear this, please make more things. I love you guys. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this movie. I'm not always going to pick one I have seen before and enjoy, but I wanted to do this for my first one. So,
Brian, why don't you go next? Tell us what you thought about Father's Day.
Okay. Yeah, what's great about this movie, I mean, like, what's great about this whole group, Astron 6 and these movies, especially Father's Day, that you could tell that they're passionate about horror movies. They like grindhouse movies. They have their own unique sense of humor that they try to fit in to these like themes. So really, if you like anything that's like 70 or 80s horror, grindhouse, comic book style type things, you'll probably love this movie. It's just the only thing is like the gore goes to the extremities sometimes, so you have to be ready for that. If you're not
literally the extremities,
yeah,
if you don't like that, don't watch this movie.
If you're not into extremities,
Yeah.
Jordan, what do you think about Father's Day?
I'm glad I watched it again. I'll just say that because the first time, obviously, I don't remember it, but then I'm glad I watched it again because I really did, like I said this earlier, really did like Cool Guys, and they did this thing where like it starts off kind of slow and escalates, and this one just kind of came in right off the bat, like this is what it's going to be like, gory and gruesome. But then but it kept escalating. I don't know how you could keep escalating from it, but it kept doing it. It was like the gore and like the absurdity of it, especially the like they go to hell, like the stuff going on with his sister and like all that weird stuff, and they're just dead at the end. All that was for nothing. I'm assuming the sister's alive, right? Back on Earth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She made it back.
Okay. So that's the one good thing out of that, I guess. But yeah, it's the absurdity of it. It went a little too gross for me at certain times, but I think that was the point, obviously, as far as like with the mutilation things and sexual acts. But it was good. I like it.
I will say that I agree with all of you in that it's, especially Jordan, when you said it starts really high note and then just like it does build for me, when I see a lot, but there's a kind of a dip in the middle, especially when you get to the part where they kill. It seems like when they were getting to that whole part of, it seems like they had to tell a lot of stuff and they tried to cut it, do it as quickly as possible. So there's a lot of jumping around. I feel like there's a lot of very specific scenes. There's so much stuff that happens in this hour and 40 minutes that
there's a lot of subplots. Yeah.
Yeah. And they do handle it really well, especially for like the amount of money they had, the kind of budget for this. It's really well put together. I think it's just like sometimes maybe you could have used another edit here and there, but generally, I mean, for the amount of money they made this movie, it's amazing what they did, what they got out of it. Really well like put together, really well directed. I thought the theme of the movie is what really caught me, like the whole entire theme of the commercials and like the theme that they used for like especially the vision of hell, and it kind of all fit together as like it wasn't like a movie they made in 2011 and you could tell because they had like they were trying to forcibly or in some fake way make it look like it was made in the 70s. Like they did it as an entire theme for the entire thing and it felt like it was made in the 70s or 80s. So hearing that it was made in like what you said 2011, I think, right?
Yep.
A lot of practical
Yes.
effects, it looked like, for the most part.
Yeah, the practical effects were awesome.
I think it was all practical. I mean, well, maybe except for her like floating.
Yeah.
There's a couple green screens you could tell.
The car explosion or like the angels in the background
right.
when he's in heaven. But
yeah, I think like even with the when you could see some of the green around them and stuff, that's probably just because
Green screen in some parts.
But in general, I mean, you can't even really tell because it's like the theme of it, like the theme what they're going for, the feel. So I think it's amazing overall feel, theme, sounds. It's just such a good thing they put together. Extremely gruesome. If, that's one thing you got to point out there. Like, if you don't like gore, this is going to be a rough one for you. But I didn't mind it except for the eyeball.
Yeah, that was, yeah. I did think it was great that they, they all got together, had this mission to kill the man, and they supposedly did it. And afterwards, they're just kind of like lost.
Yeah.
That was so funny. They're all just lost. They don't know what they're doing with their lives now. They're like living aimlessly. Amously.
Amos.
Famous Amously.
Famous
Amos cookies.
And just the showing Ab going down the grocery store, looking at cereal and Twinks, and I don't know. I thought that was great. That was great.
Yeah, I think the whole package is put together very well. So let's move on to the rating, the PAL rating of Father's Day. Jeff, what do you give it? What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's a thumbs up from me. This is a movie I use with friends to kind of gauge the barometer of friendship we're going to have. I feel like if you don't like this movie to some degree, we might not be that great of friends. That's all.
Acquaintances.
We're just going to say, yeah. Like, the humor is my type of humor.
Yeah,
so
the humor's really well done.
Thumbs way up. I really love it, and I love these guys, and I'm glad that we found them.
Brian, what say you about Father's Day? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Surely. It's a thumbs up for me. Rewatching this now, there are parts of this movie, like you said, that drag in the second half. Like some of the plots moves kind of slowly at certain parts, but the humor, the gore, the visuals in this film, it's just like, considering all of what they did on the budget, like you guys said, like it's a tour de force, as they say, of just horrible gore and humor and great unique humor. So that's why I think this movie's great. So thumbs up.
Jordan, what about you?
I already told you, Chris.
I didn't hear it. I'm going to cut that out so no one will know.
No, thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up for all the reasons I already explained. Yeah, it's great.
Yes, I'll agree with all three of you to say that I also give Father's Day a thumbs up, which would, I believe, be our first four thumber here.
First four thumber.
Take 4 thumbs and do what you will.
The quad thumb.
On the Watch Pals, our first 4 thumber for Father's Day. And that brings us to next week, our next movie, which would be Willow. So I'm going to be steering the ship and watching the movie Willow.
Love good.
Yeah, so Willow is a movie that was something I watched as a kid, probably way too early. Specifically, the scenes I remember is the dogs being horrifying as a child. I remember seeing that. And I think going forward, thinking about it in my life, I'm like looking back, there's like a lot of very specific scenes I remember, and I don't remember if the movie was good. Very specific one I'll remember also is the pigs at the end, whenever they all get turned into pigs. And like, but at the same time, now in my life, I don't remember if that movie was good, and I'm really interested in watching it again.
Pigs.
So
They get turned into pigs? I don't remember that at all.
So we will.
Maybe it's time for you to refresh.
So next week,
That Willow, do it.
God.
So next week we're watching Willow, and as Jeff said,
That Willow, do it.
so next week join us again on the Watch Pals. Thank you, Jeff, for being here.
Hey.
Thank you, Brian, for being here.
Don't forget to inject your tips, everybody.
And Jordan, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So if you want to help us out, please give us a follow, give us a like, whatever you can on any podcast platform that you use. If you want to connect with us on social media, we are on a few different ones. They are all in the show notes below or on the website at watchpals.show. That's watchpals.show. We are also on, you can also email us, I should say. You can email us at watchpalshow@gmail.com if you have a question or a suggestion or anything like that. If you want to critique us in any way, give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, please do. And we will see you next time on the Watch Pals. Please set your watches for the next episode. Goodbye and good night.
Hey, see you later.
Kick rocks.
Good night and good luck.
Watch